Hello everyone, welcome back for another edition of Virtual Yin Yoga. I'm your instructor Mike and I'm happy to have you with me this evening. What I wanted to do for tonight's practice is a sequence designed around everyday yoga, but specifically for the back. And I talk about this a lot, but a lot of people are going to have back issues at some point in their life. Usually they say about 80% of Americans will deal with debilitating back pain at some point in their life. So I think it's important for us to have a series that we can do every day. So if you're not going to do an entire yin yoga practice, you can just do this particular series just to make sure that your spine, especially your lumbar spine, is staying healthy. So the only things you'll really need, a yoga mat if you got it. You might want to have some pillows with you just to lay on. Possibly a block. There might be a pose here and there where we might suggest using a block, but it's going to be kind of optional. Yoga strap is always great, or like a hand towel. If you got one nearby, go ahead and grab it. But whatever prop you feel like you need, just go ahead and grab it. And when you have it, join us back in the practice. And when you're ready, we'll start it off closing our eyes. You can lay on your back if you'd like to, or you can always sit upright like you're in meditation. Sometimes it's nice just to see where you are today when you first start sitting, and just to observe how your back feels. And then after we're done, maybe you compare it to how it feels right now and how it feels afterwards. But we'll pay attention to the breath. I want you to breathe low in your belly, low in your diaphragm, and if you want to double check if you're doing that correctly, hand on the stomach below the belly button. You'll feel the stomach expand when you take an inhale. It contracts when you take an exhale. And this is belly breathing. It's a breathing technique that I recommend for our practice. It's going to help slow everything down, slows the heart down, slows the nervous system down, and slows the mind down. And why don't we actually just take a minute just to focus on the belly breathing, really just let ourselves settle in to our gentle and passive style of yoga that is yin. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we're going to start this off laying on the back, so if you're already there, you're already where I want you. But you're going to bring the knees up to the chest. You're going to cradle the legs like we always do, just kind of rock back and forth, go side to side. This is a great opportunity to wake up your hips and your spine. But again, specifically the lumbar, because that's what we're going to focus on for our practice here. So what we're going to do, just to let you know what I'm thinking here, a couple of forward bends, a centralized forward bend, and then one that goes to the sides. And I'll explain the actual movement and what it's called as we're going on here. And then we'll do a back bend, and then that'll be the gist of our practice. Again, this is something that you can do every day just to help keep the maintenance and on the lumbar spine, right? Make sure everything's loose and stable for you. When you're ready, go ahead and make your way for a comfortable seated position. We're going to start with our centralized forward bend. And there's going to be 3 options that I suggest for you, because all of them do the same thing with your back. Whatever you want to do with your legs is 100% up to you. So, for example, if you want to stretch your inner thighs, a butterfly pose, what I'm doing right now, would be a good option. We have the soles of the feet together, you fall in round in the pose, you get the inner thigh stretch, and you stretch your back, right? So this is one option. Something I always want to tell people to be mindful of, if you feel knee pain in this, it's not going to be a good option for you. You're probably going to want to do something else. So a lot of people will head to something like a dragonfly. It's where you spread out the legs, you lean forward, you can still get an inner thigh stretch, you can stretch your back. You do get a bonus hamstring stretch. This is one of those 2-for-1s, right? You get the inner thighs and you can get some hamstrings. So this is another option. But the final option for you is just a hamstring stretch, and that's the caterpillar pose. And this is where you have the legs out in front of you and you're leaning forward. So you stretch the back of the legs here and you will stretch the back. So again, it's really up to you as to which of these three that you're going to choose. I personally feel like doing a dragonfly pose today. It felt really good when I went into it for the first time, so I think I'm just going to stick with it. And usually with this, you kind of want to stick to one of these options. We want to be here for a while, roughly 2 to 4 minutes with our practice today. It's again more for maintenance. We just want to keep up on the lumbar spine, make sure everything's staying healthy and staying loose. Because as we age, and really just if we don't move, our body stiffens up. It's just a part of living in a body. Things tighten up, they contract. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we reverse the process by loosening ourselves up. Stretching is a great way to do it, but really just moving is honestly the best way to do it. Just make sure that things are staying loose. When you're in this pose, or any pose, you may feel the need to use a block, especially to rest your head on. For a butterfly and caterpillar pose, that would be a good option for you. I usually, if I have one, I'll have a block in front of me for a dragonfly, and I'll rest my forearms on it. But I'm not really feeling like I need it too much today, so I'm not going to use one. But that is an example of where you could potentially use a block here. And allow yourself to round in. Right? Let that head come forward. The more we let the head come forward, the more rounding in the spine takes place. And again, this is a spine series, so we want to make sure that we can emphasize that rounding in to the pose. And do your best to let the muscles soften as well. If you're noticing like your core, your back, your glutes, some muscles are just like really flexing and tightening, it's just a sign that you need to decrease the intensity, right? Maybe just dial it back a little bit. That's why I like to shout out what I call the scale of stretching, the scale between 1 and 10. If 10 is your deepest stretch, my suggestion for you is to go for around 6 and 7 on that, because you're just less likely to overstretch there. You're more likely to relax, get a nice moderate stretch, something that's not too much, it's not too little, it's just right. So let's try to find that wherever that is for you. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, that's the time for this pose. Use your hands to slowly push out, lean back, lay down, and you take your time. There, right? We're going to hang out here at least 4 minutes, so just do your best to get a little comfortable. Whenever you're taking the minute off, feel free to either do nothing. I like to just resist the urge to move and do nothing. Or you can always cradle your legs. Sometimes that feels nice just to get a little bit of movement back in there, release some stagnation that may be occurring. We're going to stretch the hamstrings next, one at a time, but isolating a certain part of our back. And what I'm going to suggest here, I'm going to actually suggest 3 poses. And again, up to you as to which one you want to do. But the whole gist of it is, again, stretch the back of the leg and a side of the back. So let's just say, for example, maybe we all stretch our left leg here. If you lean over your left leg, you'll stretch the back of that leg, but also stretch the lower right side of your back. And that's what creates a little bit of this like diagonal forward bend here. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But this option I'm suggesting right now is called half butterfly. You have external rotation applied with this leg. Some people, this isn't really comfortable for the knee, in which case maybe you want to try out like a half frog. You take the internal rotation here and lean forward. Again, just depends on what the knee is telling you. For me, this is a no-go. I feel knee pain, so I don't bother with that pose. I would say if all else fails, Dragonfly is fine, right? Both legs out, but just lean over that one leg that you're intending to stretch here. So whichever one of these 3 choices you would like, it's going to be on you. You may want to consider using a strap if you can't really grab onto anything, but you can always just grab your knee if you like, or your shin, ankle, around the foot. If you can grab your toes, go for it. Pull back on the toes a little bit, you do get a bonus calf and Achilles tendon stretch. This part is extra. The intention is the upper back part of the leg and then the lower side of the back. And another way to really emphasize working more into that side body, taking the opposite arm of the hamstring or stretching and trying to round into this. So again, for example, I'm stretching my left leg. So if I take my right arm and round into it, all of a sudden this is an incredible side body stretch. And it's a different way to bend forward. Bending forward directly down the middle, we called it the centralized forward bend before, is called flexion of the spine. Right? That's just a direct forward bend down the middle. What you're doing right now is called lateral flexion. You're bending forward, but you're also going to a side, to a lateral side. So it's a different way to work into your spine. That's why I like to suggest it for an everyday sequence like this. You know, we want to make sure that we're taking our spine really to its full range of motion, or at least to whatever fullest degree we can with our practice today. But again, don't worry about how far you go. Every day you do this, you're going to notice things getting a little easier for you. You can go a little bit deeper into it. Maybe you notice your back isn't bothering you as much. And that's something I would encourage you do to make sure that you're keeping up on treating that back pain. Like I mentioned earlier, it's common for everybody. 80% of us most likely are going to deal with it. So it's important for us to have methods to treat it, but I think it's just as important to have methods to prevent it. And hopefully that's what this sequence will do for you. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, there's a time for this pose and this side. Just real slow, let yourself out. Go ahead and lean back. You can lay down. It's going to feel nice to just lay down. Once again, taking a minute off just to have a recovery time, and after the minute, we'll get the other side. The other side when you're ready. Whichever side you're on, but I think if you're on the same page as me, you're now stretching your right leg, back of this right leg. And then you're also stretching the lower left side of the back. And I want to go over the three choices that I suggested before. This one is half butterfly with external rotation applied here, but you could always do a half frog pose. You turn that leg in, same deal, lean over the leg. Like I mentioned though, this is a no-go for me personally. For others though, it's the best thing I've ever done. Just make sure your knee is okay in one of these two poses. But if all else fails, Dragonfly is fine, right? Both legs out, but just lean over that one leg that you're intending to stretch. Because again, this leg is irrelevant, right? Whatever you do with this side, up to you. It's this side, the right side, hopefully, if you're on the same page as me, that we're concerned about stretching. So if you feel the back right side of your leg, you feel that lower back pain on the left side, lower back left, you're doing exactly how you need. I did mention you could use props here, yoga towel, yoga strap, you throw it over your feet, pull you forward. We're going to use that for leverage to get you in if you can't really grab something. But if you can grab the knee, shin, or ankle, or feet, probably be fine. And then that last modification that we had suggested was taking the opposite arm of the hamstring stretching and really trying to round into it to hit that lower oblique and possibly even higher up into that lower back. It's, again, just a different way to decompress the spine. Like I said, we want to make sure that we can take it just to its full range of motion, whatever that is. We want to continue to keep that space in between our vertebrae, something that happens to us as we age with the contracture process constantly getting tighter. The space in between our vertebrae tends to shrink, and we literally become shorter from that. And among other things too, the spine itself, instead of having that nice curve, it starts to straighten out. When the spine becomes straighter, you start slouching more, so you start losing height. So what we're doing here is making sure that we're keeping that space in between the vertebrae. Again, really critical for you. There's more space, more movement, and the less compression of vertebrae running into each other. And we talk about compression a lot where bones run into each other. So if your bones and the vertebrae are too close together, they're going to rub on each other, and then they start degenerating, they start wearing down the vertebrae themselves, the discs, the connective tissues there, and then it just creates a whole world of issues. So let's just, again, prevent that by making sure that we're stretching, keeping that space by doing forward bends. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, there's the time for the side. It's real slow. You're going to use your hands, slowly push out, lean back, lay down. Take the time. You're right, always taking that time. There's no rush to go anywhere. We're just going to lay down and relax. We have one more pose left. I'm going to call it. So our next and last yin posture, a back bend. The Sphinx pose is what I'm going to suggest. Where you lay on your stomach, you prop up onto your forearms, your elbows, and this is the pose. It's not a stretch or anything like that. All you're going to feel is dull compression, gentle pressure in your lower back, not lumbar spine. And this is to make sure that we're taking the spine to its full range of motion. We've done a lot of forward bends. So we want to do some back bends to complement that, right? We don't want to just solely do forward bends, right? Too much of one thing can be a bad thing, right? So it's important to have that counterbalance to it. And if you're going to bend forward, you got to bend back, right? Everybody's spine is different though, and maybe it's worth mentioning here. If you're in this pose, in the Sphinx pose, and you're saying, I really don't feel like I'm getting enough of that pressure in my lower back, another pose that you could do, we call it seal pose in yin, but it's called upward dog or cobra if you've done any other style of yoga, where you extend the arms out in front of you. I'm doing this in a really modified way, and the reason being is because I really don't have a deep back bend. And how you can tell if you're getting to your full range, maybe come back down into your Sphinx here. If you're going to push up into a seal pose, if your hips lift up off the floor, your lower back has reached full range. So let me just make myself the example again. Here's me in the Sphinx. It's nothing crazy. Watch my hips here. See how they lift up? I'm actually way past my full range. I'm actually overextending right now, and this could potentially hurt my back. So what I'll do to make it therapeutic, I'll slide my hands out, find out where my hips touch the floor, and here it is. This is my full bend without my hips getting involved, right? But here with the arms out and here with the elbows down, it's a pretty minimal difference. So you may not need that, but if you're someone who's saying, again, I'm in a Sphinx, I'm feeling nothing, you might want to push up, keep those arms in close to you when you do your seal pose. But again, just make sure your hips are on the floor. Because that right there is not a flexibility thing. It's a skeletal reason as to why your hips come up. And it's actually called compensation, which means when a joint or a series of joints start reaching their full range of motion, other joints have to take over to continue the movement, right? So when we're doing this back bend with our lumbar here, if your hips lift up, it's because your lumbar has hit the full range and now the pelvis is getting involved. But once the pelvis starts getting involved, that's when we start risking overextension, and that's when this stops becoming therapeutic, right? We don't want to push through that because it's not a flexibility thing. And just remember to breathe here, right? Really do your best to let your stomach muscles soften if you can. I don't know if you can hear a train coming through, but that's how that goes, right? Those distractions will always be there. So it's our duty to just let them go. We hear them, we observe them, but we don't let it bother us, right? We just let it go. It's good practice for you right there. Not just for your back. You can practice that anywhere at any time of the day. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, there's the time, real slow. I just want you to lay down on your stomach. Take your time here. May feel like a long way away, so just hang out if you need to. A lot of times I'll do that. I'll just kind of chill out here for a moment. But at some point, it's going to feel nice to do a gentle forward bend. So something like a child's pose might feel really nice. Actually, maybe I'll head there right now. In case you're curious to see what a child's pose is, this is it. You could do its inversion though, and lay on your back and cradle the legs. You know, we've been kind of doing that all practice, so feel free. I'm thinking about doing a squat pose for myself. Knees have to be okay with this one as well. Right? You don't want to push through knee pain in this kind of pose, right? Don't want to accidentally blow your knee out in the process of doing a squat. And this is a great one for your SI joints though, those joints in the back of your hip. And we worked a lot of that indirectly in this practice. Anytime you do a forward bend, you're going to decompress your SI joints. You do a lot of decompression in general, right, which means you're pulling bones away from each other. Whenever you compress, bones come together, right? So we're trying to keep that separation first. But with the back bend that we just did with compression, it is true, we are squeezing bones together, but it's on a particular side. When we do the compression pose, imagine this is your vertebrae, right? So when we're doing a forward bend, the back side of the spine will open, but when we do a back bend, the front side of the spine will open, right? So this is just like the kind of move that you need to make just to make sure that the spine is moving to its fullest capabilities. But we are at the end of our practice. And if you're ready for a Shavasana corpse pose, feel free to lay on your back. You can always lay on your side if you like. If you sat upright in the beginning, I would encourage you to do it right now, just so you can see how different your spine feels after doing those forward bends and those back bends. And the original intention of yoga, just so we all are aware, thousands of years ago, the original form of yoga was very yin in its nature. It was meant to prepare the hips and spine for hours of meditation. So after we do some stretches like this, it might feel really nice to sit upright, just so you can observe how different you feel, how much easier, more comfortable it is to sit upright. But wherever you are, you close your eyes, you pay attention to your breath, breathe low in the belly, low in the diaphragm. Turn senses, your awareness within, and observe that work that you've done with your body. Give it a compare and contrast, right? How different do you feel right now as opposed to when you first started your practice today? No formal ending to the practice. Keep your eyes closed as long as you like, but that is officially all that I have for you. And I want to thank you all for watching and sharing your practice with me. It's been my pleasure. Namaste.